Let's talk about the NBA playoffs. Breaking news. It was reported by ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski, the Athletic Shams Charania. Darvin Ham is no longer the head coach for the Los Angeles Lakers. Champ, isn't all the staff, or practically all the staff, have been let go from the Lakers?
Yes, sir. Yes, indeed. PSP. All of them got the boot.
Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised at all that Darvin Ham got fired. It seemed like he had to go because of the lack of coaching adjustments, things of that nature. Champ, you would know this well because you are a Lakers fan, even though you're from Columbus, Georgia, but you love yourself some Laker Nation. Um, what goes through your mind when you heard the news?
Honestly, I'm gonna say this, and it wasn't a surprise because Darvin Ham failed to make necessary adjustments throughout the regular season as well as the postseason. So I get that. But the thing with the Lakers is, when are you going to find some coaching stability and give a coach an actual chance to freaking succeed? The last 14 years, the last 20 years, I would say, the only coach that has lasted over 4 years was Phil Jackson. Let me repeat that. The only coach that has lasted over 4 years is Phil Jackson. Since Phil Jackson has left, they have been firing coaches at a rate of once every 2.5 years. Once every 2.5 years. And this is long before Rob Pelinka came along, so we can't blame it on him. This starts at the top. Remember, Mike Brown didn't last. Mike D'Antoni didn't last. Luke Walton didn't last. Byron Scott, an all-time Laker great, didn't last. Frank Vogel, although he won a title, didn't last. Now Darvin Ham. How many coaches must you go through in order to find you some stability? This is why you this is why you don't draft well, number one. Or all the guys who you do draft, they end up going somewhere else. This is why you can't attract good free agents, number two, because there's no stability in the franchise. How can you fire coaches at a rate of once every 2 years and expect for a free agency and expect for any type of free agent to see Los Angeles as a valid spot to come? You can't. And this starts at the top. This is honestly, like I said, Rob Pelinka plays a role in it, but this starts at the top. You can't fire coaches at a rate of once every 2 years. I have not seen no franchise as storied as the Los Angeles Lakers do that, especially if you hope to win championships. So my thing is this. You have to ask yourself this. What are the Los Angeles Lakers front office going to do now? Because all the coaches are gone. All the scapegoats are gone. You can't blame the players. You have some of the two. You saw those players reach the Western Conference Finals just last year. So how long is this act going to go on where you're blaming LeBron, you're blaming AD, you're blaming not enough defense, you're blaming those players? When is the buck going to stop where it needs to be at Jeannie Buss? When is that buck going to stop? Because they put the hammer down on Jim Buss when he wasn't seemingly doing his job. But now we're still firing coaches at a rate of once every 2 years, and we only have one championship to show for the LeBron trade at this point. So when does the buck stop at ownership? That's my main question. My thing is, and you have to ask yourself this, with this firing going on in the staff, it looks like they're going to probably have to get ready to rebuild. Is LeBron even going to be there next year? Are they going to have a chance to run it back? Or is he going to go back to Cleveland where there are a hell of a lot more great players on a certain team and just say, you know what, I'm just going to count my losses, go back to Cleveland and win one more and then retire. But at a certain point, the buck proverbially has to stop with Jeannie Buss and the Buss family, because none of this was going on when the great Dr. Buss was alive. You didn't see the firing of coaches once every 2 years. The only time you saw a quick turnaround in coaches was when Magic left. and they really couldn't find a lot of coaching stability, so they hired Magic Johnson for really a publicity stunt at that point. Let's just call it like it is. Then they hired Dale Harris in order to develop that young team, and after that team was developed, they saw he couldn't get them over the top, so they went on ahead and hired Phil Jackson. And even Dale Harris, before Phil Jackson took over, lasted for at least 4 years. He has strong leadership qualities. So Lakers need to settle in on a great coach and a great coaching staff and get some stability in that staff so you can attract a free agent, a big free agent. And so you can draft the correct players to go along with this coaching scheme, because you're not going to find stability and win championship firing coaches at a rate of once every 2 years. That's not going to happen.
All right, BRF, talk to me.
Yes, sir. Honestly, I mean, Champ really couldn't have said it better. I mean, you have to look at the ownership here, and I mean, he would, and like he hit on the point as far as like the firing the coaches once every 2.5 years. That comes from a lot of things. That comes from hiring coaches who don't necessarily have the leadership qualities in order to guide their players through. And that's also the ownership with really bad roster construction as far as like, the main, their number one, number two players on the team, and being able to, and surrounding them with the right amount of talent. Because, I mean, let's face it, like ever since, God rest his soul, ever since Kobe retired, the only year they've gotten it right was the bubble, was the 2020 title. I mean, they had the roster construction right. I mean, of course you had LeBron James and Anthony Davis, but you also had Kuz. You also had Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You also had Dwight Howard. You also had Alex Caruso. You had guys who could defend, whether it was in the post or whether it was out on the wing. You had guys that could lock people up late third, fourth quarter. The roster construction has been bad. And even with the Western Conference Championship run last year, I mean, that was like, for me, that was LeBron, AD, and Austin Reeves finding whatever magic potion he found and just was hot. Like, was just smoking hot, and he was became like a really valuable number 3 for them, and they were just able to kind of ride that wave to the Western Conference Finals when ultimately, they just ran into a better squad in the Denver Nuggets. So I think it's a lot. I mean, I think really it's the ownership from the standpoint of not hiring the right coaches and then not having the roster construction to kind of make up for that. So it's just a lot of bad and just a lot of mismanagement, not being able to handle things right. It didn't shock me at all that Darvin Ham got fired today, because I mean, he didn't have the. I mean, this was a team that got to the Western Conference Finals, but I felt some of that was kind of a lot of it was luck with matchups they had, and also just being able to kind of feed off, Austin Reeves just getting hot, being the number 3 for them. So I don't know. This move is not surprising, because I think it was just a lot of just teams recognizing what the Lakers were, attacking their weaknesses, knowing what to do, knowing Darvin Ham wasn't a good, second half coach as far as like being able to make adjustments, not being able to adapt when he needed to adapt when things weren't going his way. And it was just teams were just eating them late in the games. And this was not a shock. This wasn't a shock to me at all. My question is where do you go? Who do you hire? Because I'm starting to hear some Tyronn Lue rumors, and I'm saying, bro, don't do it. Don't go.
Why would he go?
If I'm Tyronn Lue, don't do it.
To the Lakers? Why would he go from the Clippers to the Lakers?
Because until the Clippers win a championship, it's still Lakers. Because until the Clippers win a championship, it's still Lakers Clippers. Until the Clippers win a title, it's still gonna be that. It doesn't matter what the Clippers do, like as far as having more success in the playoffs than the Lakers. Until they win a championship, it's Lakers here, Clippers here. They got to get it done first. And And I mean, and that idea of Ty Lue having Braun and having Braun and AD, it's still that's an enticing way to go still. But if I'm him, I wouldn't do it. But I mean, you just never know what kind of money that the Lakers could throw his way. Because as soon as that happened, he was the first name I heard come out as far as the rumor mill was concerned. And the Lakers are still the Lakers, regardless of how good they are, how bad they are. They're gonna they can throw money at you because they're the Lakers. So my biggest question for them is where they go from here. Like, who's going to be willing to take that shot with that roster? Because honestly, I think that roster is a point of no return roster. They hit their ceiling last year, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think the roster they have is going to do anything. I think they need to just go. I think they need to blow it up myself, to be honest with you. I mean, yeah, that was like. They really did. That's what I'm saying. They hit the ceiling last year. That was their peak. You're not going to get any better play out of this roster. I think honestly they need to blow that whole thing up, and just I think everybody should be on the table. You listen to offers, you see what you can get, and you kind of go from there as far as rebuilding that, because you're not going to get any faster. You're not going to get any farther with what you have on that team. Last year was just the height. And you're not going to get any better than that. This is not a championship roster. It's just not.
Absolutely. Before I give my opinion, shout out to my man Grant in the building. Does a great job. I've seen him on Player's Choice. Does a great job debating football. Also, go check out his content regarding soccer. Knows his soccer, man. Grant, what were your thoughts when you heard the news that the Lakers decided to part ways with Darvin Ham?
Before I forget, salute PSP, BRF, Undisputed. Good to be with you guys. Good to see you guys.
Appreciate it, man.
The more thing I would say was more thing I was surprised of is how fast it went. Because I thought what they were going to do was they were going to drag it out and they were going to they immediately said, you know what, we're not doing this. We're parting ways. We're ending it. And now I think it's like, okay, now Darvin Ham's gone. So now what? That I think BRF kind of really said it. You're now in a situation with the Lakers where we don't know if LeBron's staying. The team is essentially all over the place in retrospect with like the players. And I think you're kind of now at a point where it's like, it's what? Like, who's going to honestly take the job? I've been hearing people saying JJ Redick, Tyronn Lue. I mean, those would work, but like hypothetically, I feel like that's just going to be a temporary fix because I don't know what you can do with the Lakers right now. Like, don't get me wrong. I just think the problem is especially outside of LeBron and AD and maybe Austin Reeves on a general basis, the Lakers aren't that good. They scraped their way into this playoff. And the fact that if they had gotten swept, not only would it have been worse for them, but it would have been worse for LeBron and for AD. Now, I think with the team in general, I'm kind of like, I feel like there's so many things you could say, but you can put the blame on Ham. You can say all this stuff, but the thing I think that's most important is he wasn't accountable, bro. He wanted to say these other outside factors like injuries and this and other outside problems were affecting the team. While that may be the case, I think we all have to understand that you as a head coach on an NBA team, you have to understand sometimes you're not going to make the right choices. And so you got to at least hold yourself accountable in that regard. But I think at the end of the day, if you just throw the Ham overboard, but I feel like they have to – I think there's just more that they have to do, especially in the offseason. And I don't know if blowing it up is the best thing, but I think with the Lakers, I think you're gotten to a point where you might have to. So I don't know what you can do with this team now. Like, so let's just say hypothetically, LeBron doesn't don't pick up his option and he leaves. And essentiality, what more do you have on the team? Because you're gonna still have to pay AD. You still gotta pay. I think you still gotta pay all. I don't know if you have to pay Reeves. You gotta pay Hachi. You gotta pay one of those guys. You should, at the end of the day, yeah, you should probably just blow it up because there's nothing else that you can do with this Laker team. And this Laker team, like, this is the first season, like, I'm gonna be completely honest, that I've actually watched Laker basketball like every single game. And this team, they'll have an amazing game one night, and then the next night they'll act like they're a bunch of little kids on that basketball court. Like, it genuinely makes no sense. So with Darvin Ham, it was for high time for him to get on the road. But, man, the Lakers are in a rough situation for the next few years because I essentially think they're going to have to blow it up.
You have no choice but to blow it up. And I think for Jeannie Buss, and I like Jeannie Buss, she, even though it's not much to brag about, she obviously did a much better job than Jim Buss. Again, Stephen A. Smith said it best. Jim Buss, it's not that Jim Buss didn't know basketball. His ego got in the way. Mm-hmm. I'm reading an article here from NBC4 Los Angeles. Reports surfaced that Ham had lost the locker room with team officials and players pointing to the head coach's fluctuating rotations, poor game plans, lack of in-game adjustments, and defensive principles as to why the team struggled from mid-December to early February. And also, the Lakers will still owe him the remaining $10 million off of Ham's contract. And it was reported by The Athletic. According to The Athletic, during their 3 regular season losses to the Nuggets, players privately complained about the coaching staff not having them adequately prepared to stop Denver's late game offense. Here's why I look at it with Darvin Ham. Darvin Ham had to be let go because of the adjustments. I've heard him on Player's Choice. Shout out to Damo. I like Damo on Player's Choice. He's a really good dude. He said it best. Darvin scam. Like, I really don't like I don't like using the term Darvin scam, but hey, in this situation, it has to apply when it comes to you failing to make adjustments in the necessary rotations. How clueless can you honestly be as a head coach? And when you look at, it's disappointing because the Lakers, Anthony Davis, what has been a knock of Anthony Davis all throughout his career? Durability. How many games he played? 76? And he averaged around 24 and 12 and still proved he's still one of the elite players in the NBA. I don't want to hear any criticism with Anthony Davis. I thought throughout the playoffs against the Denver Nuggets, he did his best. No shame going up against Nikola Jokic. After all, I've said it before, he's the best player in the NBA, and he's going to win MVP. LeBron, what he's doing at 39 years old is damn near unprecedented to be this productive at year 21. What are you going to do for the Lakers? It's about what are you going to do for LeBron? Brian Windhorst of ESPN reported that LeBron James may opt into his contract, may test free agency. Could he possibly do that? The question is, who's willing to take LeBron James? And what if the Lakers try to entertain LeBron by picking up Bronny? Because Bronny has entered the NBA draft. If the Lakers pick him, does LeBron James want to finish his last couple of years in LA? After all, they live in LA. They love it there, of course. LeBron, not just basketball, but you also have to look at what he does business. I mean, he has the shop there. He does a lot of other business adventures there. Hey, I can't be mad at it if he wants to stay in LA. Outside of them taxes, ain't nothing better living in Southern California. I think all of us wouldn't mind staying in Southern California. It's actually beautiful there. I wouldn't mind that. As for the Lakers, you got to get rid of D'Angelo Russell. Bye.
Oh, fact.
I'm sorry. Got to go.
No, you're not wrong. I just didn't want to say that hurt his feelings.
Fact. You got to shut that boy.
He got to go. I'm going to keep Rui Hachimura. I like Rui because he's athletic. He can give me some defense. He could be a quality scoring option, maybe like a number 3 option. Austin Reeves, he gives you the playmaking, but you need to get some interior bigs. It can't just be Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis would love to be back playing the 4 position. You got to get a 5. And this also, to me, champ, this elevates Dwight Howard. Now, Dwight Howard ain't gonna get an NBA job in the NBA again, but it shows you just how much his presence was there during that time during the bubble, because Anthony Davis didn't mind playing the floor. Dwight Howard came off the bench, gave you some hustle, gave you some energy. You need a 5, and you need shooting. Gabe Vincent was supposed to be there. He got hurt during that season. The question is, who's going to be the head coach? I heard Ty Lue. Yes, the experience of LeBron. They won a championship. They were better with him than as opposed to David Blatt. I don't know. JJ Redick, of course. JJ and LeBron, they have their podcasts. But how is JJ Redick going to actually be as a head coach? Because some people could look at this and say, is this LeBron? Is this LeBron's fault? It's not just the Bucks' fault. Is this LeBron's fault? Because people are looking at him as like a coach killer. So what should the Lakers do? Should they have to blow up the ship? And should they start with the draft process? But here's the thing, champ, and I've said this before. We've seen players, young players, Lonzo Ball, Julius Randle, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram. We've seen other young players, even D'Angelo Russell, that have departed from the Lakers, gone somewhere else, and looked better. The Lakers, how are you going to find guys that can develop young players right out of the draft and can make them be all-stars? The problem is with the Lakers, they have the perception of championships. They're tied with the most championships with the Boston Celtics. How are they going to do that?
Well, if I could interject real quick, look where the Boston Celtics were and look where they are now. They didn't have a championship for almost 25 years. They stunk in the 90s. They stunk it up in the 90s. Let's just be real about it. And even sometimes in the 2000s, they had to rely on certain players. And thank God that the East was as weak as it was back then, because guess what? Outside of Isaiah Thomas, after, Paul Pierce and the gang had left from that 2008 championship, they was pretty much relying on these young players. So the thing is, it took, and remember the stockpile of draft picks that the Celtics had. They were patient, and they went through the process. Now, if you know basketball like I know it, guess what? The Celtics had the most championships in league history. And guess what? They were patient with the process. And I hate to use that word. They were patient. They drafted well. They got the coaches where they need to be. They saw that Brad Stevens saw that he couldn't lead the team as well as he could do it. They went and got Ime Udoka. Unfortunately, he got in trouble for some things off the court, and things of that nature. But they ended up trying to do a lot of things in order to make that team better. My problem with the Lakers has always been this. Stop waiting till next summer in order to address your roster. What do you mean by that, champ? This is what I mean. You got to start drafting these players and stop trying to revolve them around the next big free agents that's going to come in free agency. A Shaq does not come around that often. A LeBron doesn't come around that often. Those type of guys don't come around that often. How did you build your foundation in the 80s? And even in the 90s before Shaq? You did it with player development. You did it with coaching. And you did it by knowing who to draft and who to stay the hell away from. Now you're going around for the last 10 years since Kobe Bryant has left, looking for the next big free agent that you could put on your team just to fill the stands. I understand LA loves a winner, but guess what? When you put yourself in position to lose, you might lose, unfortunately. So my thing is, Boston was patient with their process. They got players who they could use. Thankfully, the East was weak back then, but I digress. When it was time to move off those players with Kyrie, with Isaiah Thomas, with players like that, and let that young core come in and play, then guess what? They let those players develop during that time. That's what Los Angeles need to do. Guess what? Kobe had to develop. Eddie Jones had to develop. Guess what? Nick Van Exel had to develop. And even when Shaq got there, they didn't get put over the top until you got that big head coach in Phil Jackson that helped finish off the product. Because remember, Shaq was still putting up numbers, but that team, although they had 4 All-Stars, couldn't get past the Western Conference Finals. So you have to develop players and take note from a lot of these teams that are having dynasties. Guess what? Denver built their team in the draft. Golden State, the previous dynasty, built their team in the draft. San Antonio built their team in the draft. It's only so many free agents that you're going to have throughout the times where you're going to get lucky and get them. And unfortunately, LA has been relying on that for the past 10 years. Big name after big name has come into Los Angeles, has rarely done anything, and guess what? They're out of the door the very next year. What do we have to show for it? No draft picks until damn near 2029. I'll be 40 years old when y'all get a first round pick. So that's what y'all need to do, man. Stop looking for the quick fix in order to try to sell tickets real quick and do what a front office is supposed to do. Take note from the guy who helped build your championship team in Jerry West and how he helped build the Golden State Warriors. Take note from the Denver Nuggets on how they built the Nuggets and how they scouted and how they got players. When you notice a lot of these European players, guess what? You have to scout. That's where your scouting and everything comes in. LA's not doing a good job of doing that. You're just looking for the quick fix in order to get a championship. You're not going to luck your way into a championship this time. It's going to take some time in order to get you squared away. And until Los Angeles learns that, we're going to still be at the bottom of the barrel every single year. You're going to still hear these empty promise articles coming out every single year. LA is going to go after this guy. LA is going to go after that guy. And if they can't do that, and if they can't sell people on that, then they're going to start going back to old articles about what could have happened in the past. It's time to stop that. Nostalgia needs nothing. I'm going to quote a person from The Wire, the great Bodie from The Wire. Y'all know what that show is. If you know, you know. The thing about the good old days is this just that, the good old days.
But Champ, if you feel so passionate about the Lakers, why don't you fly your ass to LA and say, listen, I'll be the vice president, I'll be president of basketball operations. We got to develop a culture that's conducive to winning, and it's going to take us longer than anticipated. Because you see, look at it, Champ, the Knicks. I live in Jersey. I don't like the Knicks like that. And they're actually building something. That should tell you something.
Hey, the age of the super team has come to an end. The age of you getting that big free agent and you bringing them on that team and them flying you to a championship is pretty much at its end at this point. We've seen it twice over. We've seen it with Brooklyn. You just seen it with Phoenix. You've seen it all over. The age of the super team, of you making the quick fix, is pretty much over at this point. You need coaching, you need players, and you need players with chemistry. You're not just going to put a whole bunch of guys that can score on a team and they're going to take you to the NBA Finals. And, you know, to my credit, in my defense, the reason why I didn't fly out in LA, I couldn't fit in the seat and coach. I'm just going to be real with you.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God.